What's up? Hope everyone is doing well. Wanted to do an exclusive breakdown video for you today. It's F-15s, which pains me, but it's a pretty cool video. We'll watch part of it just so you can hear what is going on and then back it up and break down exactly what is going on, because it's a pretty busy video when you're talking about the radios and the fight that's happening. But it's from 2012, so 10 years old. It's from the 67 Fighter Squadron, the Fighting Cocks out of Candina, and it's their Raytheon Trophy video. So that's given for a squadron that has an air defense or air superiority mission, which typically Eagles, that's all they're doing. They might do something else every now and then. This video got me pretty excited when I first saw it. I think you'll like it, and we'll break down. Now, in 10 years, tactics have changed quite a bit. Comm has changed even in the last 4 years, and it's constantly evolving. So this video is going to be a breakdown of Eagles going out, protecting a piece of airspace, protecting a point, whatever the objective might be. But you would typically go out there and you're defending a base, you're defending a strategic point of interest. And again, it all depends on what the tactics are, planes available, what the threat is, how wide of a piece of airspace you're protecting, what you're guarding, how you're working it in, etc. So let's take a look at the first about minute and a half of this, and then I'll back it up and break it down. But it's going to start with an unrestricted takeoff from the Eagle, so I'll give them that. Let's check it out.
Clear for takeoff. Change departure. Back one, clear for takeoff. Runway 5. Push 12.
I can't deny. Company, today I die. Until the day I die. Until the day.
You can see the formation here. Obviously, it's being shot from the fourth jet in this, but you got two jets line abreast. The third one close, probably within inside a half mile as they transit out to the airspace, but they're in a tactical formation. That'll widen out much further. If you're talking Raptors 5th gen, they'll be 20, 30 miles apart as mutual support. But a 4th gen fighter, even with Link 16, you will typically be close in within visual range. And it might be somewhere out 3 to 4 miles where it's barely visual range, or sensor support where you have them on data link. Again, tactics constantly change, but I think this is a shot so you can see everything, which is pretty cool, as well as for ATC, making sure you're within a standard formation for air traffic before they get to the airspace.
All players, full time, combat 4-5. Ready, take go, full time. Fight Squad 2 group rock 08630 28,000 cap hostile. Group rock 045 25 37,000 cap hostile. Combat COD commit. Fight Squad South group beam south.
COD 2 group was like 106 31 28,000 print Hornet.
Delta 1 strikers established at the push point 10,000.
Fight Squad North group stack 42,000 36,000 hot hostile.
COD 2 Fox 3 medium, southern south group 27,000.
COD 1 South group maneuver. South beam south. Fox 3 close northern south group 29,000. COD 1 Fox 3 two ship north arm south group 095 44 29,000. Crank south. 12 arm south gate maneuver 28,000 turning hot. COD 1 target there.
So a lot's going on. Let's back it up and we'll break down this. I'll be stopping it, trying to just break down what's going on. Again, a lot of radios, a lot of chatter that's happening here. It's a busy time. So let's jump into it. And classic Eagle guys flying with a cock call sign. They're the Fighting Cocks. I think the official call sign is Cockshare 1, but they abbreviate to Cock 1, 2, 3, and 4. So yeah, Eagle guys, right?
Until the day I die.
All players, full time, combat 4-5. Ready, take go, full time.
Okay, vol time. This is the vulnerability period. You'll be assigned a vol time when you're going out there, and that is the time you are working for whatever you're doing. You know, my deployments was predominantly close air support, so your vol time would be 4 hours where you're going out there and you're working for JTACs and other ground forces. In an air fight, maybe your vol time is 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour. You're going to be limited on weapons. if you're getting into a big shooting match like this. But they've called vol time, so now it's the start of the fight. Picture of the AWACS on the screen. You're going to hear them chime in with the picture, and that is what everything looks like and what they're facing in the fight.
Fight Squad 2 group, rock 08630, 28,000, cap, hostile, group, rock.
So I'm going to tell this is an east-west fight. He's saying the bullseye cut, which is a geographical reference point that everyone knows, including the AWACS, and he's giving a bearing and a distance off that geographical reference point, which is called rock in this point. Large geographical areas, such as flying around Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, you might have 2 to 4 bullseye points that are spread out that will allow you to reference that region. Right now, he's giving the bullseye cut, which I think was 086 for 30, or 080 for 30, 080 heading, so roughly east for 30 nautical miles, as well as the altitude stack.
045, 25, 37,000, cap, hostile.
080 and 045, there's 2 groups of enemy fighters. They're stacked in altitude, and they're capping. He's already declared them hostile, which means they can shoot them once they have a valid solution. Inside the F-15 formation right now, the flight lead is driving the tactics, and depending on what they're doing, having fought eagles, they tend to just go bonsai, which is they run straight at them and they don't stop or turn around. Again, tactics vary, but depending on the picture you're seeing as the flight lead, you're now deciding what you're going to do with the formation. If it is a picture which you need to whittle apart, you might have bogeys in there so you don't know if they're hostile or not. You don't want to eat up all your range right away. So what you'll typically do is pump 3 and 4 or pump 1 and 2, which means you're going to split off your other 2 jets in your formation. They're going to turn cold and run cold for a certain distance as you run hot towards the enemy, trying to get an ID, trying to shoot, and trying to attrit the picture, and then turning back around, giving yourself more range and more options. Because as that hot element shoots and turns cold, the cold element is now going to turn hot. They've built additional range between them and the picture that you're looking at, and you'll keep that going for a certain period. Bonsai is also a tactic where you'll all 4 just keep running down track and shooting. There's different advantages and disadvantages to both. If you have a picture out in front of you that is sortable and shootable and everyone is declared hostile, by running hot and not turning cold, you're keeping your SA up, your situational awareness up, and you're attriting most of the picture. The minute you turn cold, your SA is cut in half, but you do gain the distance in between you and preserve some additional options later on. So that's all being said. That's all going on right now while managing the formation, while staying ready, trying to mentally build the picture in your head if you can't see it on your radar. AESA radars, advanced radars that are now popping up in most 4th gen fighters, are very helpful. It gives you that God's eye view. When I started on F-16, it was a B-scope, which means you have the radar field of view plus or minus, let's call it 60 degrees. The screen is a square, right? So your radar picture actually has to be interpolated and spread out on your screen, which then does weird things like J-hooks. You have to interpret how things are moving. It's gotten better since then, but let's watch this a little bit further.
Combat, God commit.
All right, so it's hard to hear, but he said he's telling the AWACS that COC is committing. So his formation is now going to commit to these hostiles and do whatever it is, whatever needs to be done to attrit the forces here. Some things you might be said now is gate, which is to utilize afterburner. You're going to accelerate, you're going to climb, you're trying to give your missiles the most kinematic advantage. So if I can be going supersonic when I hit the pickle button, I've already given that missile a free supersonic ride. So now it can go even further along the way. So they're committing now downrange.
Squad South Group, beam south.
South Group, beam south. I'm not sure who called that out. Sounded like the AWACS called that out. So whoever sees the movement first, inside that F-15 formation, the flight lead is designating who's targeting what. So this is an east-west fight. So they're going to designate the 2 groups, North Group and South Group, depending on where the Eagles are. If it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, then the 3 and 4 will sort to the South Group. 1 and 2 will sort to the North Group, typically. And again, it could switch depending on where the formation is here.
Cock 2 group was like 106.31, 28,000 print Hornet.
So Cock 2 has locked into that group, and he just said print Hornet. So obviously they're not here fighting fulcrums and other adversary. They're fighting friendlies they have, or friendly aircraft, right? Pretend to be bad guys, which in this case is Hornet. His radar is able to nectar, which is using science to look at the fan blades on the motor and determine that's a F-18 that he's locked into, and now has designated that group.
Striker established at the push point of 10,000.
Fighter Squadron, North Group, stack 42,000, 36,000, hot hostile.
Okay, so the AWACS has just said that North Group is stacked and an altitude stack, and they're turning hot, so hot hostile. So now they're running at the F-15s, and he's reiterated that they're hostile. You see the picture here of the stick, so he's going to hit the pickle button because he obviously has a lock as well as a valid shot into this group.
Cock 2 Fox 3 medium, southern south group, 10,000.
Fox 3 medium, southern south group. Cock 2 has shot into the southernmost fighter of the south group. So assuming there's two fighters in there, whichever fighter would be on the south side, he shot in there medium, which is purely for training purposes, but it's basically the probability that the energy he's given that missile, which he's seeing the dynamic launch zone in his jet, he's calling out, there is an F-15 pilot on the ground that is listening to this air war. There's actually two of them. One's for the good guys, one for the bad guys. What is happening is when he called medium, that pilot on the ground has a probability of kill table, a PK table. And he is trying to give a realistic training environment to what would be happening in real life. So he is assessing, they're looking at the ACMI feed. So they're seeing a digital feed of what these planes are doing, both good and bad, and who is maneuvering. So he's watching. Once he's shot, he should call a timeout, which is when that missile times out into that fighter. And he will assess if that bad guy maneuvered enough to kinematically defeat that missile. Now, in real life, a missile comes off the rail, you'll have, I guess some Eagles now actually have sniper pods. You could have a visual of that plane blowing up just with your eyeballs. You could see it in the targeting pod. You could see it break up on your radar. Or after X period of time expiration, there's nothing there. You can assume that missile was effective. And if you don't see the explosion, you shoot them again. So all that's happening and that's purely what that medium call was for.
Cock 1, south group maneuver, south beam south.
So south group maneuver, south arm, beam south. As I hear that, Cock 2 shot into him with a medium shot. Most likely that would be kinematically defeated. So he's probably thinking that guy is going to be alive and he'll be a problem either very soon or later on. He's turning to the beam. So again, that adversary is probably notching to the beam, doing a defensive maneuver to kinematically defeat it because he realizes he has a fire to control radar locked into him, which probably has shot at him. So that is an SA call there. And again, now they know that it probably will have a problem to deal with later on. That's going to require more missiles.
Fox 3 close, northern south group, 29,000.
So they're hammering the south group there. So shooting the northern of the south group.
Cock wide, Fox 3 two-ship, north arm, south group, 095, 44.
So Fox 3 two-ship, north arm, south group. There's a lot going on there. Fox 3 two-ship, meaning he has shot two jets in that south group.
29,000, crank south. 12,000.
I should mention too, if he shot that one plane twice, it would be second Fox 3 to that group. But he said Fox 3 two ship, so he shot a missile into each one of those. Let's back it up here just a little bit.
Ship north arm, south group, 095, 44, 29,000, crank south. 12,000.
Cock, crank south. So they are turning 45 degrees. So as you're running at the enemy, you shoot them. As a wingman, if you shoot first, it would be Fox 3 Southern South Group, crank left or crank south, whatever it might be, which is a request. You're asking your flight lead to turn the formation, and you're going to go 45 degrees off. And all it's doing is just stiff arming the fight a little bit longer, but allowing you to maintain a radar lock, feeding your radar data to that missile. Once the missile no longer needs your radar, that's when you'll turn cold. In this case, the element lead or the flight lead has directed the formation to turn 45 degrees off from that adversary. Again, just trying to prolong and save distance in between them as to give them an out option and more distance in the end. So again, lots happening here.
Southgate maneuver, 28,000, turning hot.
South group maneuver, turning hot. So remember, they went to the beam. Now they're turning back in. So the South group most likely kinematically defeated that initial shot by Cock 2, and now they're turning back in. And someone's targeted there.
Target south on South group.
So it sounds like at this point, I feel like that's Cock 1's voice. He's directing Cock 4 to target the South group. It could be Cock 3 as well as an element lead directing Cock 4 to target into there.
Cock 3 south on South group.
Perfect response from Cock 4. He could respond with Cock 4 targeted, but instead he responds right with a Fox 3 call. So he was locked in, ready to go.
Cock 1-2, reference 320. 3 and 4, reference west.
So right now you're hearing Cock 1, 320, Cock 3, reference west. So they're in elements at this point, most likely stiff arming or beaming the fight, trying to again, preserve distance between the adversaries and them for follow-on engagements.
Combat Cock continuing to push, left be screen.
Yep, so they're still running down track. Love it. I've fought Eagles, but I could say sometimes there's some comedy that comes out of this, but they maintain a lot of SA by running down track.
Combat 4-5. Cock 1, north arm, south group, turning hot.
Cock 2 Pitbull.
So North Arms turning hot at this point. Pitbull letting the flight lead know that he no longer needs to support his missile with his radar, so they can crank, they can turn cold, whatever they need to do at this point.
Cock 1, kill 2 ship, bullseye, 104, 24, 31,000, F-18, heading south.
Cock 2 spiking notch north.
Okay, so Cock 1 called a kill 2 ship, and then you hear Cock 2 spike notch north. So Cock 2 has picked up a radar lock. He has been radar locked by a fire control radar, so he's seeing that, and now as he approaches a certain range, he has to notch beam, as the enemy was doing, to kinematically defeat any kind of missile that might be coming his way.
Heads up, north group, turning hot.
And you see that is a defensive call, but your element lead could potentially be sympathetic and notch with you, but most likely is going to continue down track, because as that enemy is locked into you, he is locked into Cock 2. He's not looking at Cock 1. Now, again, adversaries, tactics, all that changed. This is 10 years old. So the standard fighter assumption at this point most likely was a single target track adversary is what you would train to, meaning he could only lock and track one. So if he's locked to your buddy, he can't be locked to you. So you're going to continue down and go shoot him in the face to save your friend. I don't think you can say the same today in 2021.
Combat.
Fight Squad, Combat 4-5, broad.
Cock 2, naked in. 4-5.
So real quick, Cock 2 naked in. He no longer has a spike on him. He has been running cold away from the fight. But the minute that spike drops, he's calling naked and turning in. If he has SA where his element lead is, he'll deconflict low. Again, it depends what the deconfliction plan is and how it's built, data link, etc. But you can now imagine they're probably separated by 7 or so miles at least as he turns in. And he's probably descended, and now it's to get back into his block.
091 85 23,000.
36,000.
Cock 1-2, reference south, reference south.
Fight Squad at North Group, targeting Cock 1.
So the AWACS just called that the North group is hostile and is targeting Cock 1. So they're leaning on that formation. Again, a lot's going on here. It depends on the tactics, your adversary that you know as you go out there and you've been briefed to what you expect to fight. In this case, it sounds like the adversary that's still alive is leaning on the flight lead element, so number 1 and number 2, which would allow 3 and 4 to potentially go in there unseen and shoot them. But some of the stuff has been cut down. They're working their way from a long range fight down into a visual engagement, which you would find if you could not declare a hostile. If it was a bogey and you had to go into a visual for a merge, and that backs up what I was saying in the beginning. If you have a mixed picture or if you have a bogey in there, you're going to try to preserve that range. You're not going to be bonsai and just eat all your range up as the 4 of you drive in there. You're going to pump an element to turn cold, trying to trick the hostiles, and then try and work an upgrade for that bogey in that group so you can shoot him at range, vice having to go in here to the merge. But it makes for a great video.
Clockwise Spike 310, close.
Fighter Squad, spike range unable.
So Spike 310 course, you hear the AWACS come back with spike range unable. So they can see where that spike is coming from at times and then also give you a range. Why he's asking about that is if they give you a spike range 40 or 50 miles, you're not too concerned at that point. But if they give you a spike range that's inside the mid-abort range, meaning that you can't kinematically defeat their missiles, you concern. Now, some of this, I would say we're approaching Hollywood style. As you see, there is an enemy fighter on his tail. But yeah, you can only do so much when the Air Force doesn't let you record everything.
Cock 1 and 2, break right, flare. Cock 2, Bandit, you're 6 o'clock, slightly high, 1 mile. Bandit's all on you.
Okay, so the Bandit has shown up on their tail. This really wouldn't make sense with the amount of situational awareness these guys had marching into it. But who knows? Maybe an adversary was down low as these guys were driving to fight one another, shooting, and that adversary has now popped up and has shown up on their 6. Not where you want to be in life. But one saw it, he broke the formation, which is the first thing you want to do, and then you're assessing enemy awareness and who he's leaning on. In this case, he's leaning on Cock 2. Again, some Hollywood here, right? They're meeting at the merge, but he saw him on a 6. It's still pretty realistic, or at least gives you a taste of what it could be.
Cock 1's merge, hostile eagle.
So Cock 1 is called Merge Hostile Eagle. So this is a high aspect engagement where they're meeting at the merge and now turning. So again, there's some creative liberty that's gone into this, which is, again, fine.
That's your merge, Bandit. Bandit switch, Cock 1's engaged. Cock 1 press.
What I wanted you to hear there is the Bandit switch, Cock 1's engaged, and then the press call. So you'll have an engaged and supporting fighter when you enter into air combat maneuvering. So in this case, 2 Eagles and a bad guy out there tumbling around. When you go out, and this is one mission set, you'll go out there and train as a part task trainer. So like a building block approach to one of these big fights, which is very dynamic. And when you have 3 F-16s or any fighters tumbling around, it can get sporty. It's a lot of fun to be the bad guy and just shoot everyone and harass everyone. But in this case, the engaged in the supporting fighter role is really important. So when you see whoever has the most advantageous shot or most offensive, to summarize it, is going to be the engaged fighter. In this case, he switched to 1, so now 1 is engaged. He's going to fight his best fight against the adversary, and it's 2's job to back him up. And that can swap back and forth multiple times very fast. The press call is from the fighter that is supporting, meaning I will deconflict from you. You fight your best fight. Don't worry about me.
Cock 1, just hold high man. Cock 1's a high man.
Okay, Cock 1 confirm high man, then Cock 1's the high man. So when you're out there and your bad guy is also an F-15, it can get very confusing who's good and who's bad as they've been tumbling around in space. You need to come up with a way of delineating that, and it might be geographical, it might be altitude based, I confirmed the West man, East man, there's good and bad, and there's ambiguity, so you have to be very careful because you don't want to shoot your wingman. That's a bad day. But in this case, he can high man versus low man as they're in this vertical fight is a very easy thing. And number two's opinion, I would probably agree, who's high and who's low. So one is the good guy, so that means two should very easily be able to turn point and kill the low man, which is the bad guy in this case.
Fox 2, cock point, kill banners. Edit, copy. Kill. 1 and 2, separate, 150.
So Fox 2, he shot an IR guided missile, so an AIM-9. It looked like he might have flared it off, but real life, you're going to see that missile trail the flare, and you're going to rip off another one right away. If that's the case, it's one of the things that you debrief to, and then you got to deal with. And then separate 150 course, so they're turning it. But again, whoever that supporting fighter is needs to call an out to get the formation moving back towards good guy land and not towards bad guy land again to reassess the picture. What's the next fight?
Cock point, reference south, cock is out.
All right. So hopefully you enjoyed that breakdown. There's a lot going on, and we really could spend a lot more time. A typical debrief, especially in the Eagle community, you're going to dissect every word that was said because C3 comm, clear, concise, correct comm, is super important. You're going to be directive, then descriptive. All these things just get dissected with a razor blade, with surgical precision when it comes to debriefing it, because you can just hear how busy it is and how important it is that when you have comm real estate, that you utilize it effectively to communicate your message in the shortest means possible. Again, because it's a rather dynamic environment. But hope you enjoy that. Hope everyone's doing well, and talk to you soon.